Back in the golden era of 1960s, the FAA was issuing 35 active student certificate for every new instructor certificate minted. It was an instructor's paradise, but look at the long term, decades long side. By the time we've hit 2025 year, that ratio hit its lowest point in recorded in aviation history, under 5 new students per new instructor. Right now, the aviation industry is divided. People are saying that pilot shortage is a myth because the flight instructors can't land airline interviews, while the other half insists that airlines are desperate for bodies. Who is lying to you here? It feels incredibly frustrating to look at aviation forums and see major airlines pulling back on hiring classes, especially when you are told that getting a commercial license and getting 1,500 hours, you get a job. It makes you feel like you timed the market perfectly wrong. To find out if pilot career is still viable, we have to look past the panic. We just got our hands on the complete long-term FAA pilot data tracking the number of new pilot certificates issued each year, spanning all the way from 1960s to today. By mapping today's factory output of new pilot against 6 decades of history, we are going to uncover a hidden trend. You will see the exact chart showing why the CFI market is experiencing its worst bottleneck, and precisely when the math dictates the hiring gate will have to swing wide open again. To understand why airlines are behaving so weirdly right now, look at the sheer volatility of how airline payrolls have shifted over time. So look at this graph. For the over 30 years, the monthly change in total airline employees fluctuated in a tight, predictable band. Look at the massive drops during 2001 dot-com crash and 2008 recession. But look what happens when you get to the right side of the page. A historic, absolutely positive spike of over 200,000 employees in a single window as the post-COVID hiring wave peaked here, followed by imminent aggressive correction. So airlines overhired the full-time staff immediately after the pandemic to cope with the travel surge. Now that the market has been stabilized, air operators are intentionally optimizing their balance sheet. They are shifting towards part-time and contract structures to cut fixed overhead costs. So the jobs are there, but the structure nature of those every level contract has completely changed. So did airlines completely break their own hiring infrastructure? Yes, absolutely. So this chart proves that the post-pandemic hiring spree wasn't just a normal upswing, it was a systemic anomaly. So airline expanded at unsustainable rate to capture the revenge travel. What we are living through right now is in a permanent industry it's a massive corporate hangover from that record-breaking green spike on your screen. So if you're an instructor struggling to get student sign-ups, this next chart is going to blow your mind. It tracks the ratio of newly issued pilot certificate, and it proves this is literally the toughest environment for CFI in modern history. So look at the blue line here, which tracks the ratio of new student certificate issued relative to new instructor certificate issued that same year. So back in the golden era of 1960s, the FAA was issuing 35 active student certificate for every new instructor certificate minted. It was an instructor's paradise, but look at the long term, decades long side. By the time we've hit 2025 here, that ratio hit its lowest point in recorded in aviation history, under 5 new students per new instructor. So if we look at the new raw number of licenses minted per year from 1960 to today, new student pilot issuance peaked in the late 1960s at nearly 160,000 a year. Today, even with the recent flight training room, the FAA is only issuing about 59,000 new student certificates annually. Zooming in on the last 20 years, look at the purple line here. New student issuances peaked dramatically around 2023 at nearly 70,000 a year. Meanwhile, the red line for new instructor certificate issued has kept climbing straight up to over 13,000 a year. So why are schools still pumping out new CFIs if student numbers are dropping? So because flight academies are running an enrollment machine that was built in 2022, they are still churning out new instructors even though the customer pool, the actual intake of a brand new student pilot is actively shrinking. It's a classic oversupply problem at the top of the training funnel. This graph brings us the ultimate paradox of the current job market. Why does it feel like this is oversupply of pilot when everyone keeps saying senior captains are retiring? The answer lies in the massive data anomaly that almost everyone else is completely misinterpreting. So look at this fascinating divergence at the tail end of the graph here. The blue line represents newly issued commercial certificate. And the orange line represents newly issued airline transport pilot certificate. In 2024 and 2025, the FAA minted over 20,000 new commercial pilots in a single year, approaching production height we haven't seen since the 1970s. But look at the orange line for new ATP certificate here. So it took a sharp, sudden nose dive down to under 8,000. So why are people successfully getting their commercial license, but the number of new ATPs is tanking? Are they all just stuck building hours? So here's a secret. The headline is roughly 50% of those newly issued commercial certificates are not even staying in the United States. In the US, US is global capital for flight training. So tens of thousands of international students come here on training contract for their major airlines in Asia and Europe. They build their foundational skills, check the box for the FAA commercial license, and then they immediately pack their bags and go back to their home countries. So unlike US, which enforced the strict 1,500-hour rule to sit in the domestic airliner, it is completely standard in Asia and Europe to fly right seat in Airbus 320 or Boeing 737 with just 250 hours or 300 hours of total time. Because those international pilots leave the US pipeline the second they get their commercial license. They never show up on the FAA ATP issuance chart. So domestic bottleneck is real, but a massive chunk of commercial oversupply line is literally flying overseas to start their careers immediately. The 60-year-old data shows that aviation is creating to massive self-inflicted system shock. So the industry is generating an immense volume of commercial license, but 15% of oversupply immediately leaves for 300-hour airline jobs in Europe and Asia, while the domestic creation of fresh ATP certificate has temporarily slowed to crawl. But remember the domestic reality. 50,000 legacy US airline pilots hitting the legally mandated retirement age of 65 over the next decade here. So airlines can slow down their local hiring pipelines to save money today, but they cannot stop the clock on their aging workforce. If you look at 60-year-old chart, every single massive drop in pilot production has been followed by equally dramatic vertical spike. So this market is a test of financial and mental endurance. If you can't keep your hours building, keep your nose clean, and weather this temporary bottleneck, you will be sitting in the premium position when the airlines are forced to clear the backlog to replace those 50,000 retiring captains. So I have compiled all of this brand new long-term historical FAA data set and graph into clean folder for you. Link is in the description and the comment section. So if you want to stay ahead of the aviation job market with the data instead of forum rumors, hit the subscribe button right now. Leave a comment below with your current total hours. Are you stuck in the commercial backlog, or are you grinding through the CFI bottleneck? Let's just strategize in the comment. And until then, safe flight and happy landings.